music can be like that too. I don't want to send this email. I don't want to, do this extra take. Yeah, because I think it's so easy too as a musician to just settle for mediocrity. To be like, yeah, it's good enough.
Yeah, actually, that's the most dangerous thing is mediocrity. Especially now, like there's more and more and more songs and information being put out into the world. The crazy thing is that if it's just okay, no one's ever going to hear it. No one's going to care about it. It's so important to just like, it's got to be, oh my God, this is amazing, or wow, this is sucks. This is terrible. Because if you can elicit some kind of strong reaction, somebody somewhere is going to feel it.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the McCove Mindset Podcast. Today, we're sitting down with my guy, James Bryan McCullum. He's worked with Drake, Nelly Furtado. He's worked with Shawn Mendes, played some of the biggest stadiums around. He's got some Juno Awards. Shouts out to Canada. Anyway, let's get to our conversation of how he built this incredible career. And as always, if you like what you're hearing, hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you think. Let's get to it. Yeah. James Bryan, welcome to the McCove. Welcome to the McCove Mindset Podcast, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks so much for having me.
For sure. Oh yeah, play that.
Bruce. Still one of my favorite grooves I've ever written.
Man, how long have you been playing guitar?
Way too long. I started when I was 9, and I didn't really put it down like from that moment for a while. Definitely, all my teen years, I was just like, that's where I was in my room, just jamming, learning.
That was like your PlayStation?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at that time, we didn't have PlayStation, right? So, but there was like, that was my Pac-Man or whatever it was.
Right? You was on Atari.
Yeah, Atari, Nintendo, whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. Not when I was young. I didn't pick up keys until kind of later. But when I did pick it up, it was one of those kind of things where it's like, I can't really put it down.
Exactly. So wait a minute. Before that, were you on PlayStation?
Yeah, well, I was on Sega and I was a gamer. I was definitely a gamer kid, but that's like what happens, I think, when you're an only child. Like,
yeah, you got time.
So yeah, because like I'm adopted, so being in my adopted scenario, I was an only child. I have a brother, and I was an open adoption, so we know each other. We're tight.
Oh,
but
nice.
I grew up, primarily an only child. So I think when you're just like rocking out alone, especially in like the early '90s, it was like video games came out. Yeah, that was a thing. That was a thing.
I don't know about you, but for me, music. Well, I was music, right? Like I have 2 sisters, but I grew up kind of like on the edge of a small town, like border of country, and I was definitely, I wasn't super social. It was like one guy, my neighbor was my best friend, and then until we got into fights, and then he wasn't. So for me, like music was always that like escape for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think honestly, feel like that's a really good terminology for it. Is like it certainly helped me to escape and explore even.
Yeah,
it was
right.
like a real exploration.
I hear that. It's alternate universe for me. It's like one where everyone understands.
So did you just, when you started playing, were you just kind of like noodling or did you take lessons?
I always did both, right? So I always learned. I was always picking up stuff by ear since I was like, like a toddler. Like my parents didn't really play too much. Like my dad played a little guitar, but they always had instruments around, and they're always playing music. So there's piano, hand drum. So I was always hitting stuff and learning by ear first, and then when I was 9, like I said, so I started taking lessons. And so for me, it's always about both paths. It's like, okay, learning classical music, learning jazz, learning the theory behind it, and then just like hearing it and learning that way and picking up solos and jamming in bands. So.
Word. So like, did you study music in school?
Yeah, totally. I was band geek, music geek. So I was like, where I grew up, pretty small town, but I went to definitely the best music school in high school, well known for like its musicals, musical theater, and the band. So I was like playing saxophone. I like played in the pit bands for the orchestra, so you learned reading music and all that. The jazz band, all that stuff. Yeah.
Word. So that brings me to like kind of my first question, which is like, how valuable of an asset has that been to you, like being a session musician? Like in the work that you've done as a session musician, how important is that, or how much of an asset is that?
You talk about having formal training, like being able to read music versus doing it by
Yeah.
ear. Yeah. For me, it's just like, well, music is a language. And so however you get to it, it doesn't matter. Like I find for me, learning, if you had to pick one by ear, is the more important one because, it's more feel and, it's kind of a direct link and not so in your head. But it definitely is nice to be able to speak all the dialects. So if I'm talking, if I've got someone puts a chart in front of me, I don't get freaked out. I can read that. If I have to write a chart, I could do that for other musicians. So yeah, so as a session player, it's come in handy. But to be honest, most of my career has been in like pop music, and mostly that's just doing it by ear. So it's all kind of my foundation, right? So it's like
Hmm.
my, do my crunches and my workout before I show up, and then I can play the game, right? So when I'm in the room, I can really react quickly and to whoever I'm dealing with. If they are coming from that world, I can speak that language. If they're coming from, not without the classical training, it's not a problem.
Word.
So
So
yeah,
like, who have
it
you played
doesn't
for?
hurt. It
What
doesn't hurt.
that, honestly,
Right?
that's
Knowledge is
how I
always
think about it.
right. What about
It don't
you?
hurt.
Yeah. How did you learn?
Well, I learned by ear,
Yeah.
and so I was an ear guy, and
So tell me though.
I
So
was
when were you intimidated then when you were in those scenarios where you were expected to read something, or when you were like interacting with whatever
I was
some?
a I faked it. Like
Yeah.
I was a big, I was just like always trying to finesse the situation. Cause look, funny story is that like in the school that I went to, so it's like, yeah, I went to Dover High School, right? It's general public school,
Yeah.
and like most people can't read music, right? Like our
Yeah.
band, our choir, most people can't read music. If you can't read music, you're probably in a band, right? Because you actually have to kind of know a little bit about reading music. But in choir,
Yeah.
it's just like they just play the same lines over and over and over again for like
Yeah.
half a year. So you just kind of like, all right, I sat here, I remember it. But so when I went to the University of Delaware and I went to audition to get into the music program, um, I scored really well on my vocal exam, and I scored really horrifically on my like written exam and stuff. And
Right.
they brought me in. They're actually like, is everything okay? Like, was there anything that we need to know about that like happened in like your life? Like pretty much they're pretty much saying like these two scores don't match up. Did
Yeah.
something personal happen in your life? And do you need to retake the written exam? And I was like, I can't read music. And like I was so clueless that I didn't even realize at that point in time that that statement is just like such an ignorant statement to say when you're at a school trying to apply to a
To a
collegiate
music
level music
program.
program. Yeah. Like I
Well,
didn't
I hope you
even.
followed up. Hope you followed it up with, yeah, but I can really do it by
Yeah,
ear
well I
easy.
was
And it's
like,
like
I
I'm great
got
with my
really
ear.
blessed. I got blessed because as the stars would have aligned, I was in an all-state choir, and the year before, the all-state choir director was Dr. Paul Head, and he was the interim chair for the music department. So the actual chair was out on
Oh,
sabbatical, and he was the interim chair, and he was like, "Oh, I remember him. Yeah,
nice.
he's a great musician. He should definitely be in our program." And they pretty much were like, "Can you learn how to read music over the summer and re-audition to the program?" So like
Yeah,
3 months, I
sure.
went from like not really knowing how to read music to at least fluffing it enough to get into the program. And then I kind of faked my way through the whole rest of the thing.
Mm.
Like to be really honest, I just like
Yeah.
faked my way through. And ear training and sight singing was probably like that was easier for me than theory.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like theory was kind of like, what is going on in here? And ear training and sight singing was easier because it was kind of more of what I understood.
Well, of course, yeah. All your training, right? What you were doing before.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I know what he's playing. I can sit down to the piano right now and
Yeah.
just play back whatever he played. And so that's kind of how I would take my test. Was kind of like
Mhm.
I would just sit, listen, and imagine. Like I could like hear it. Like, okay, I heard what you just played. If I were sitting at the piano, this is what I would play. And I had, then now I'm calculating in my mind, okay, I played this note and I played this note and I would play this note. And then I just, write them in. So the
I
rhythm was
love that.
is what rhythm took me a while to get because
To
I didn't
write.
really
Yeah.
understand how the timing went. I'm like, I know all the notes, like the pitches.
Yeah.
So I could get the pitches right, but then it was like, but now do you understand the rhythm? And so that was really complex for me, bro. That was really, really, really tough for me.
Yeah, well, I have to say, I'm really thankful that I had great mentors all the way along, like in kind of the more traditional music path, right? Like a great first guitar teacher. Shout out to Guy Cayenne. He just very he inspired me like from the get go because he was just like so into music, and I just could feed off that energy right away, right? And he was supportive, and like yeah, then in high school, like I had a great music teacher. There was a young guy came in like right after graduating, Dave Sisler, who I'm still good friends with, and again, it's like they they brought the energy, like they got the excitement and the you know that you get when you're playing in a band or whatever, but they somehow managed to explain that like, when they're talking about theory and stuff. So it was like they opened that kind of drier world for me in a way so I could tie it all together. So yeah, I'm glad I got both sides.
I'm glad you did too. I'm
Yeah,
always appreciative of people who like I think I've been very blessed in my life to have worked with really really incredible musicians. And I think whenever you get to be around really gifted musicians, it helps to like bring reality to you to be like, wow, there are really, really gifted and talented people out here who really understand a whole world of things that a lot of the population just really doesn't get,
yeah,
and you're one of those people, like you're so gifted. And that's like I am curious of your path with like the education
yeah,
because like look man, we go to school, right? We see a ton of incredibly talented musicians. Even when you don't go to school, you see a ton of incredibly talented musicians, but ultimately, even with all those skills and knowledge base, there is like a bridge that a lot of people want to cross that don't find a way to cross, which is like, how do I play pop music? How do I
mhm.
get into a recording studio with someone and play guitar or play sax or play drums or play, like, how do I bridge that gap? So how did you bridge that gap from like formal education and traditional music avenues into like the music industry?
Yeah. Well, so for me, like I said, it was always like side by side. It was happening at the same time, so it was just integrated. Like so, I started learning by ear, so I was always going to be my number one go to. Then I learned how to read music and learn the classical side. And then, but when I was in high school, I was learning classical guitar and flamenco and stuff. I was, I had my first bands, you know, put my first bands together, cover bands playing at school, doing all that stuff. So it's like I learned at that point about band dynamics and, how to work a crowd, how to get a gig at the school, like stuff that you would bring into the industry, right? And then, um, I actually was really blessed. Like I was teaching guitar by the age of 12 at the same place where I
Whoa.
started. Yeah, which to adults and stuff, which was a trip when I think about it
That
now.
is a trip. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, for them, man, I don't know, they must have thought they were getting ripped off at first. They walk into my art room, but actually, it really worked out. Like so, things like that, like that was another great opportunity I got early on that really built my confidence, right? And
Yeah.
showed me that I can actually make money doing this. This could be a career path. So from that age, 12, I was making good money. Like I went from paper route in delivering papers, which is a job that doesn't exist anymore. But like that, earning a few bucks a week to like making really good money per hour, doing what I love, and kind of sharing what I know and with a passion for. So anyway, and then I started working like in high school. I also got hired to play at some local musicals, like in the pit band, right? So that again, I was using my reading abilities and stuff in there, but it was also building relationships. It was about, okay, what else? You could also do this as a career. You could just be one of these guys, work in the theater world. I didn't even realize that was an avenue. So, and then besides all that, I had like I said, little bands going like in high school and stuff. And so the dream was always to like, okay, I want to play Wembley. I want to like, be a rock star at that point. But having these other avenues just help build my confidence, and that's something that's so important for everyone, and no matter what we do, right? When you're a kid, have those, someone to point you in those directions. So.
Yeah, that still don't answer my question, James. Like, how did you, how did
Oh, just a
you
long
end
tangent. Okay.
end up getting into the
Okay.
record business?
Okay.
Like,
So
cause
I'll tell
somebody's gonna
you.
want to know, how did this guy end up playing for Drake? How did you win a
Same.
Juno? How did you,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm telling you, it's all the same thing. I two paths, same point. So I
We'll be
got into
trying to
music.
walk the path with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, amen. Let's do it. So I got into University of Toronto, which is like the best most music program in Canada at the time for classical guitar. So that was again all that, classical training and stuff got me to that point. But when I was going there, I was still doing all the other stuff, and I really wanted to be a rock star more than like a classical guitarist. So like a small part of me thought, oh, maybe it'll be cool if I could, be one of the few, like handful, literally, of people that can make money playing classical guitar around the world. I realized within like a week of that that's not what I wanted to do, and like definitely by the end of the year, all my friends were in the jazz program, and I joined the jazz program the next year, second year. But a couple of those friends ended up being like we formed a band together called the Philosopher Kings, and that was my bridge into the music industry because we went from playing clubs, got a friend of ours to do indie music video that happened to get picked up by the biggest music station. It's called Much Music. It's like the MTV of Canada. Uh, like this same band, that was the launch pad for everything that followed. So if
Right.
I didn't like do my classical training, I wouldn't have got to that school at that moment, wouldn't have met those other guys. Um, so it was all, again, like it's always both sides of it happening at the same time.
That's pretty awesome.
So we got signed to, so back to the industry, we got signed to Sony Music, Sony Records after like a few gigs. So we were very like, we all like had put in a
You
lot
were
of work on
fast
our
tracked.
own. We were fast tracked at
Yeah.
that moment. It was just like the right time. We were in Toronto, which is like the music capital of Canada. So, the industry was there, and we just got lucky at that time, as well as being prepared for that
That's
moment, right?
all. We got lucky, and we were also really good. Like,
Yeah. Well, that's
yeah.
right. Right. What's the success is opportunity meets preparation, right? That
Right.
who said that?
So,
Definitely.
so then what was it like, kind of, like, what was that? Because I think everybody dreams of that, right? Like, so that scenario, everyone dreams of that. Like, oh, okay, I put a band together, got my band together, and we want to get signed. And then it happens. What
Yeah.
happens after that?
Well, it's so funny because well, first of all, like that doesn't happen like that anymore anyway, right? So it's like a different world. So that particular
Yeah.
moment was when like there's a lot of money in the traditional record companies from CD sales. Like every time new technology has changed, you know, eventually the industry catches up to it, and they found a way to make money with the repackaging like all the old tapes. But
Right.
so anyway, so the Canadian companies at that moment started signing domestic acts, which they hadn't really. That it was a small industry compared to like the states, right? But anyway, so as soon as we made a record there, like we had an in-house studio at Sony Music at the time, which is really so it was really just a really unique and very cool experience where we were just like all recording live off the floor because we were all great musicians too. So, well, whatever, we'd all played a bunch together, right? So we were recording to tape. We were all producing it. So we were like self-producing. So there was so many lessons then, as well as dealing with the industry for the first time. Like our A&R guy, who A&R is, a creative lead from the record side, who signed us. They're not always super hands-on, but this guy's office was on the other side of the studio. So literally, he would come in like every hour, like, "What is that?" Or "That sounds like crap." Right? And, like, it was so annoying at the time. It was like, we just want to do our art, man. But then, you walk out of the studio and you're in like the business. You're in like the marketing
Right.
department's right there, his office. So it gave me an education from that point as well, that it's not just about what we do in the studio. It's not just about the music. That's first, but you got all these people working together to try to make this thing happen. And so that was a great learning experience for me, right there. Wow. I don't know, am I answering some of your questions?
Yeah, no, you are, because I think of it as just like your story is interesting. It's like it's really unique and it's interesting, and I think that like people need to know the journey that it can be, and that it can look like a bunch of different ways. And I think that in a lot of independents' minds, it's kind of like, okay, I want to get signed. I want to get a deal. And then like after you get a deal and like, I want to get a publishing deal, if you're a writer or whatever. And
Yeah.
and then especially for,
Well, that was funny
and that's
for us.
typically from the,
Can I
go
tell
ahead.
you the publishing deal? We were so young and green at that time. Literally, the publisher's office, Sony Publishing, was like right beside on the other side of the studio. So we like came in there with our lawyer, who was like, I don't know if he was the best lawyer for us, but he did the deal. And they're like, "Okay, sign this record deal." And then it's like, "Do you want fries with that? Here's a publishing deal. Can you sign that too?" And we're like, "Oh, okay, sure." Literally, so it was a whirlwind, and it was all in house at that time.
I think people want to know too is like, as an instrumentalist, because I think that typically we think about like, okay, as a songwriter, as an
Yeah.
artist, how does it work as a guitarist?
Right. Well, what do you mean? How does it work? Well, in the
Like,
band,
how do
it's
you
like,
get into the business and play and work on records and get cuts with people and get invited in to, like, what is that process even like? Because if you're an instrumentalist,
well, first of all, you got to be really good so that you're invaluable, right? And
right?
so people want and need you once they hear you, like, "Oh, I want more of that," or it's like, "Oh, okay, I don't know where I can get that." Um, so that comes back to like all the training you do at first, right? Just to kind of really hone your craft. But for me, honestly, like everything in my life, it's just been about building relationships. So whether I play guitar or whether I'm drum or whether we're not talking music at all. It's just like it's always just about building relationships and planting seeds. Those are for me, like that's what I'm doing every day. I'm like a song gardener, right? Every day I'll meet someone. It's like, "Oh, let's be creative together. We write a song. Let's like see if that one grows or where it goes." And so when I walk into a room, like back then, in my head, I was already a songwriter and a producer anyway, but everyone just knew me as a guitarist. And even now, I think the way you just set up that question, perhaps that's still how I'm seen
That's how,
largely.
yeah,
So you
this
see
is
me
so
first
true.
as like, you see me as like the guitar guy, right?
And it's crazy because I even like know you. I see you
Yeah.
as a guitar guy and I know you.
Well, can I
You
tell you?
know,
Well, if you follow, so we follow each other on social. So it's true. Like, what do I put up there? I put me playing little guitar videos, right? Because that's my comfort zone. Look, I brought it. So it's like I can't leave. It's got to be
right.
close to me. Yeah. So I am a guitar guy, but I'm not just that. So I think that's what separates me and how I've been able to sustain a long career.
Right, like you
other
are
than
not
guys.
what you do.
I'm not. Yeah, and no one is. Right.
Right.
That's the goal there. Right. Someone actually. Oh my God, a friend of mine just went. He just posted something really emotional about it. Like, you are not what you do. And I think, let's just sidetrack, stop for a second. I think as a musician, that made it through the pandemic, that was such a scary moment in 2020, personally, and for every musician I could see, because for my whole life, I've been identifying just with what I do. I'm a musician, and now all of a sudden we can't play for people, we can't play with people. Damn, I was like, that was a really, really, really challenging uh, process for me.
Yeah, me
But
too.
that was a lesson, right? Well, I know you shared that. I appreciate you sharing that on a post, that it was that you're social, you're an extrovert, right?
Yeah.
And so,
And your identity gets wrapped up in that sometimes. Your value
yeah,
can kind of get wrapped up in that, and it's really important to take a step back and again acknowledge, like, I am not what I do. Who am I?
yeah, exactly. So for me, yeah. So wasn't it, I mean, now that we've survived COVID,
Right,
I
we're on the
mean,
other side.
thankfully,
We made it.
yeah. And I mean, do you feel like that was some lessons, a valuable lesson there for you, or what?
Man,
Or are you
yeah.
still?
I think look, you see all this gray in here? This
Not as
didn't
much as
I
mine.
am
That's why I shaved today. See that?
I I'm very serious when I say that there was none
Yeah.
before the pandemic. You know, like this all of this happened incredibly rapidly. When I say that
Hmm.
the pandemic like affected me, it did. You know,
Yeah.
it really it affected me a lot. And not even for like, the reasons of like, oh, it's a struggle like that. It was like I was blessed enough to not go through that part of the struggle, but
Hmm.
I went through like just personal, psychological and identity and figuring out what I
Yeah.
want to do with my life and my career. And it was a pivot too, because really the last time that I seriously performed out was in 2020. It was like the
Wow.
summer that they kind of faux opened up. It was like right, the pandemic started around like
March.
February-ish. Like they started
March.
locking
Yeah.
down. Yeah, February, March, they started locking down. And here, where I'm at in Delaware, they opened back up again in like June. But we only
Oh.
opened for like a month or so, and then everything shut back down again. So like during that time, I opened for Jimmy Allen, and he's a big country star.
Oh,
And
amazing.
that was after that when it locked down again. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that is like the avenue that I want to continue to keep
Yeah.
pursuing with the same intensity that I had been previously doing. And I had a baby, so like that also was a shift
Yeah.
too, where I'm like, oh man, like I really want to be available and accessible,
Yeah.
and I was already in music for TV and stuff. I was already in like that sync space. So I was like, I think that more of my attention probably could be spent here. And I saw it as like an emerging, like an expanding field. And there were
Yeah.
there were a lot of indicators that said if you want to make a pivot, now is the time to make a pivot. But that's
Exactly.
completely like a shift of how I identified myself. I'm like, I'm the
Right.
guy who's on stage and singing songs, and like
Mm.
there's even a vibe, like there's a whole, the feeling, like the high that you get from performing.
There's nothing better, man. Are you kidding?
It's
Yeah.
the
I mean,
best feeling.
you
It
can't
is
even
the
explain.
best.
It is. So I mean, even when you're not performing, I'm sure yeah, like you still miss that. I mean, like that is
Yeah,
it's
it's
great to
withdrawal.
experience that, right?
it's
And
it's
you put up,
withdrawal.
I mean, when you really look at what it takes to, go out there on tour, especially nowadays, it's like there's so much crap. Like 99% of it is terrible, and then for that 1% of insanely beautiful magic that you have, yeah, it's like it's a high emotionally, it's a spiritual moment, it's a connection. I feel like when we connect with an audience, when you're sharing
Yeah.
what you created and what or, whether it came through you or whatever. So yeah, man, yeah. So I have lots of lessons. So back to, you see me as a guitar player. So I still think
Yes.
that's my number one, like, that was my calling card. That's how I get in a room. He's like, now I'm just like, oh, you're a crazy musician, first, right? Or and then people know me. Well, then you look at my track record. And I was like, oh, he's written a lot of songs. It's not just a player. He's like, he's doing something. Oh, he's produced a bunch of those things too. So, um, yeah, like whatever it is that people gravitate towards, I think embrace it.
Right.
That's my advice. It's like I love. I'm so thankful. It's like I found the guitar. That is like my. That's why I feel like most at home, right? When I got that in my hands. But when you're in the room, then it's really about connecting on a personal level. And so I know so many musicians that are incredibly, technically gifted, but are totally antisocial or like, just do not make that connection or just do not enjoy, they're not extrovert at all or don't enjoy connecting with people. More than anything, I love collaborating with people. I love kind of helping, finding out. Very curious. Like I really love working with an artist and want to know what they really want to achieve, and I really am excited about helping them get there or find that. So that's kind of like right after me as a great guitarist for sure. Like I know my bigger talent. Like if I broke both hands today, put me in the same room, I'm still good because
Right.
you got your creativity, I've got all the experience that you have regardless, right, in life and in music. So
It's vibe.
vibe, it's vibe in
Vibe is
relationship.
important. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's even why I asked you to be on the podcast. Which and thank you for being so graciously to lend your time
Hey
and be
man,
on
it's a
the
pleasure.
podcast. But I was like,
I love that you're
yo,
doing
James got a good vibe. Like that's really what it
it.
comes down
Okay.
to. It's like if I'm gonna take time out of my day to sit down and talk to some folks, it's like I want them to be the people that I know that I have a good vibe with.
Well, same here, and I think that's exactly what I think anyone in any business will come to that realization eventually, right? I mean, that's why, when I was a kid, it's like maybe I heard like, oh, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And the way it was presented to me at that time when I was young, I remember thinking that as a negative, right? I was thinking, oh, it's somehow you're cheating, so you're not really like, oh, it's
Like
just,
nepotism.
yeah, exactly, taking advantage of a situation because you know somebody. And now I see the positive in it. It's about who is in your tribe. Who do you want to spend your time with? Like, I mean, another lesson, massive lesson from the damn pandemic was obviously time's our most precious asset, right? Health
Right.
and time, right? So for me, every day I'm like, who do I want to spend my day with? It's like, who knows if tomorrow's going to be here. So,
I love how you just framed that because I think that it was framed that way for me too. Like, that's not what you know, it's who you know. And I mean, I'm not saying this is for anybody in all situations, but specifically, I think in my personal life, everyone who I immediately heard that information from were inherently people who didn't necessarily have strong networks in areas where they would have liked to have strong networks. So I think
mm,
that when they said that, it was like they were giving me wisdom, but they couldn't help but attach the energy that
yeah,
of like it's
the
negative.
bitterness there, there is a bitter flavor with it, right? I hear you.
Exactly. Because I think is like when I've gotten older and I hear people lend that advice, um, and they're maybe from like within my network or people that I know, people that they themselves value the network that they've built or created. When they give that advice, there's a subtle difference in how it comes off where it's like no really like it's important to know people. It is important to make friends with people who like our assets. You're right. When you say it's a tribe, it's like, yeah, imagine that we all have to go out and eat. There's a
Hmm.
group of us and we all have to go out and eat. And there's someone there who knows how to cook. There's someone there who knows how to hunt. There's someone there who knows how to, like, I don't know, skin the animal or whatever and then turn that into like some wares. Like everyone
Hmm.
has different skills and
Yeah.
all of those skills collectively help each other. Like you all bring it back to the tribe, because inherently in that, I also feel the subtlety of sometimes when people say it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's coming from the perspective of you know someone that can do something for you instead of the perspective of when you get to know someone that may be valuable to you, they also get to know you and you can be valuable to them. And so when you're
Exactly.
thinking of it as like I add value to whoever I am connected with, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's like you're right and you need to know me.
Amen. Absolutely. Like that's such an important lesson. I think for anyone listening that's like, young and just kind of figure out, yeah, their way, any music or any industry really. Yeah, because you have to value. I mean, yeah, it's all perspective. It comes down to perspective, and it's like there's a million ways to get to the same result, whether that's like getting rich or whatever your definition of success is or happiness. But for me, it's like doing it in a way that gives me when I get to share what I do best, it makes me feel great, and I know that I'm giving. I'm in my purpose, right? And so
Right.
that makes it easy, makes it like fun and easy. And so when I'm like creating music, I'm in that zone, and that's why I want to keep doing it for the rest of my life as long as I can. But I'm also, like I said before, I'm really curious. I'm a really good listener. I think that's so important because again, like you were just talking about some people that maybe see it from the perspective of transactional. It's like, what can I get from this person? Oh, I gotta go to this party tonight because maybe I can meet this person who's going to do this for me, right? As opposed to it's like, wow, this guy, I really love this music, or I love this guy's books, or I love their energy or whatever they're doing online. Man, I'd love to know more about them. It's like, and then you have a conversation, and then if it's genuine, they feel it, you know it. There's anyway that's that's the key to why I'm still doing what I'm doing and why I've been able to build an amazing international network. And I consider them just like, well, me, I got friends all over the world. Then the longer you're in the industry, it's like the smaller the world gets. You know, it's nice.
Right. It's funny because like over the last like 2 years, the people that I'm connected to in Canada has like tripled. And that was because I didn't know anybody in Canada.
Well,
And I'm
that's
like,
thanks
yo, what
to the
is
Songwriting Academy. That's thanks to Mark
yeah, like yo,
Sutton,
what is
right?
going on with what's up with Canada? Because Canada seems to be like just growing crazy, expanding. It's like it's really dope. I mean, this company, this podcast, right? It's sponsored
Yes.
by Joyburst. It's sponsored by Joyburst and the Joyburst Talent Search. And you know, just to make mention of it, the Joyburst Talent Search is a talent competition where you enter it. The rules have actually expanded so more people can enter because this is all about share and joy. So if you're a musician, instrumentalist, whatever, anything, if you go on to TikTok or go on to Instagram and you make a post and you just hashtag Joyburst Talent Search and you share, like you singing, playing, just something that gives you joy, you hashtag Joyburst Talent Search, it qualifies you to enter into a $10,000 cash prize opportunity and like then some extra stuff after that too, potential publishing deal. Like there's really neat stuff attached to this.
And the circle is
And
that this is a Canadian company.
exactly. And the
There you
company's out
go.
of Canada. And I'm like, this is cool. So it's owned by Brad Woodgate. And he also owns like the No Sugar Company. Are you familiar with that company at all?
I'm not because I'm still a cigarette addict, so I'm not even.
Yo,
I'm
this is
not
crazy
even.
because you look jacked. Like I'm like, yo, you must be. James is out here lifting weights all day. It's like I see your traps
That's good.
through you.
I
I'm
do.
like,
That's
yo,
right. I do yoga. I do power yoga, man, and I cycle.
what?
So, but as
Okay,
long as you
so
got it,
power
well,
yoga.
let's
Look, I
talk
need to
about
get into that.
You do, yeah, absolutely. You know
Yeah, I'm
why?
trying to look like you when I grow up. Like,
Hilarious. I love it. Well, you know what? Whether you're gonna look better than me for sure, but if you get into some yoga now, if I started when I was maybe I've been doing it almost 20 years now. So yeah, but that
wow.
is like there's certain things in my daily routine that just help make life better. And for sure, like, finding whatever it is whatever form of exercise and spiritual exercise, and, I put that all together. Yoga puts that all together. Sorry. So yeah, get on the power yoga, man.
I'm gonna have to go search it and look it up because I'm like, this is
Oh yeah,
yoga.
I'll send you a link.
Like, you look like that from doing yoga, bro.
Well, it's been a while since I was at the gym. Yeah, yeah. You could, whatever it is, man. You could once, it's definitely easier.
Well, if I was in Canada, I could just probably do way more cold exposure.
Oh God, man! Can I tell you? Everybody's on this cold kick, and I get cold just thinking about the cold. Like I grew up in Canada, but I'm not like I'm warm, cold-blooded, so I need to, I need to be warm. I don't know about this cold exposure thing. I'm
What? Oh no, it's fantastic. It's amazing. So I'm into the cold exposure, but I've been doing it
okay.
for a minute. I've been doing it for a while, and I think part of that just also came from like I ran track. I ran track my whole life, and there's a fair degree of you need to get into the ice bath or you need to get, so you're just exposed to cold frequently anyway.
Like for injuries or something, you're saying afterwards.
Exactly. Yeah. For recovery or anything.
Yeah.
And it works. Yeah. I think when you're young, you're just used to like being exposed to it. You're just like, yeah, it's cool. It's fine. And then there's also the experience of like when you're running in the winter time and you just like, yeah, I'm not cold. Like it's cold outside and you don't have to necessarily be running anymore. Like if you go out and you run in the winter all the time, you're just like used to being out there. And it's almost like the way your body produces heat is just on a different level. You get around other people and they realize it. They're like, yo, like you're always warm. So yeah, well, that's just kind of how it is. But I also noticed that like with the cold exposure that I do, because I take cold showers probably like 4 or 5 times a week. And I feel great afterwards. Like after I get out of the shower, I'm like, yeah. Because, like, look, when you get in the shower and it's hot, it's like relaxing. And sometimes you need okay, cool, it's relaxing. But when you get in and it's cold, it's letting you know, like, I get this feeling like, whoo, yeah, like I'm alive. I get that feeling.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's the feeling that happens when you get in. Because before you get in, there's like a cool little psychological battle that happens. Like you can tell where you are at spiritually and mentally for the day. It like sets the tone for you. So you get up. If you turn the cold water on and you're like, I don't really want to get in. You feel that resistance. It's like, you know what? Maybe I'm not really, like, I'm not being aggressive about the day. Why don't I want to get after this? This is like not even that difficult. It doesn't last that long. And when it's over, it's over. And so why am I avoiding this right now? And I think it's just important to get over that friction. Maybe it's not about the cold water or anything like that. It's just that it's like something you don't really want to do, but you need to go and do it anyway. Because afterwards, it's like, man, it's over. I got the whole rest of the day in front of me, and that's over now. So I think you can relate it to music. Music can be like that too. I don't want to send this email. I don't want to, do this extra take. Yeah, because I think it's so easy too as a musician to just settle for mediocrity. To be like, it's good enough.
Oh, absolutely. But actually, that's the most dangerous thing I found is mediocrity, right? In general, but definitely, like in music, especially now, like every day there's more and more and more songs and information being put out into the world. And the crazy thing is that if it's just okay, no one's ever going to hear it. No one's going to care about it. So it's so important to just like it's got to be, oh my God, this is amazing, or wow, this sucks. This is terrible. Because if you can elicit some kind of strong reaction, somebody somewhere is going to feel it. And music is so subjective that even if I think it sucks, someone else is going to love it. So anyway, yes.
So because it is recent,
mediocrity.
Fight against mediocrity, absolutely. So because it is recent, I gotta ask. I gotta bring it up because someone's gonna want to know.
Yeah.
How did the Drake opportunity come in, and what was that like?
Yes, thank you for asking.
Is
And
that a
that
Toronto thing? Is that a Canada thing?
well, you know what? There's no one more Canada than Drake, right? And also no more Universal, which is amazing. Can I tell you that it just the whole way that happened just kind of summarizes everything we've been talking about, which is, preparing for a moment, right? That's all the years of all the skills you develop, and then the relationships, building relationships so that the moment can happen. So that's how that happened. So like 20 years ago, I was working with this Canadian artist named Divine Brown. You can check out. We wrote a song together called "Old School Love," and I produced it, and became number one. It was awesome. But on that session, the assistant in the studio was a guy named Noah Shabib, and
Hmm.
who ended up being Noah 40 Shabib, who's like Drake's main producer and right hand man, and started sounding ODO. Um, anyway, so he was just getting his start on that particular session. He knew, but the way I handle myself in the session, asking about him, what are you into? And just, treating him with respect. He remembered, and he remembered that being a really good session. And maybe perhaps the way he saw me interacting with the singer and whatever, the vibe was good. It was just a good day, good couple of days. So that's how we connected. However, that's where the seed was planted. But then, I left Canada right about the time that he had Drake. Well, actually, so let me just also say at that day when I asked him, "What are you up to?" Because no one asks the assistant engineer what they're up to. Usually, they're just like, "Oh, get me a coffee." Maybe they'll
Right.
say, "Please," right, if they're respectful.
Right.
Right, but I was like, yeah, what's up? What are you doing? What are you up? What are you into? I mean, he was already, and he said, oh, I'm working with this rapper. You gotta check him out. He's amazing. I'm like, oh, what's his name? He's like Drake. I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. Send me a tape or something. And I don't think he ever did. Like, he was whatever. They're doing their thing already. But I left Canada right when he blew up. I went to London to make music for like 5 years, dragged my family to UK. When he blew up, I was like, how am I going to get back in touch with him? I love what Drake's doing. I don't see myself in everything he does, but in all the love songs and the more melodic stuff,
Hmm.
that's, and then when I heard he was a fan of Sade, I was like, oh, Sade's like my favorite artist. I'm like, okay, we got something in common.
There's
We
some
got some common
synergy.
ground,
Yeah.
some synergy somehow. But I didn't know how it was going to happen. So when I came back to Canada, like 2013, I tried maybe reaching out at some point. I didn't have his contact. Maybe I reached out online. Didn't hear anything. So I let it go. And then couple of years, 2 years ago, I'd been putting out little guitar videos on my Instagram. And one day I got a DM from 40 about it. He's like, "Oh, I love that, man. Awesome. You could, great to see you playing. You got to come by the studio." And I was like, "That's what I was waiting for." Just like, "Yes,
Right.
okay, that's yep." So it was really just thanks to me again, just reminding him just by doing something total kind of unrelated. Like I was doing some cover. Maybe it was like uh jazzy song. Maybe it was like Bob Marley, whatever it was. But he liked my playing. It triggered the memory for him. So I came to the studio, and it was actually no. We made plans to go to the studio, then COVID hit, and so we couldn't do it right away. So and the lockdowns where I live in, it's in Ontario, it's part of Canada, were like some of the most longest and severe lockdowns. Like we were locked down like on 5 times or something. It felt like
Oh
so.
wow.
During this after a whole year, when the summer it opened up a bit, so I reached out like pretty immediately. So again, that's another thing is like follow up, right? Like I didn't just let
Right.
it go. It's like I remember I was thinking he was in my mind, and I was oh yeah, and in particular, um, I'm really dragging the story out, but there's lots of little lessons here. Okay, so in particular, so if something comes to my mind now, like at my age, I realize okay, if I'm thinking this hard about somebody, there's a good chance that energy maybe they're talking about me or thinking about me too. So I react quickly. So
Right.
that's a lesson I learned, and I really do believe there's some truth to that. So
Yeah, it's like a Wi-Fi signal.
yeah, exactly, right? It's all signals, energy. So I reached out to him, and he was like, "Dude." I was like, oh, can I come to the studio now? It's like, dude, I was just about to call you. Yeah, we're just finishing this Drake album. You got to come by, some stuff. Why don't you, maybe you can get on. And there's this, there's another artist. There's a possibility of doing a track with. So anyway, I went over there immediately, and I played on a bunch of Drake songs that were already kind of almost done, and it was for his album Certified Lover Boy. So that was the album. So when we connected, that was the album that was coming out. I played on a bunch of stuff, and you know what? In that camp, they're very hush hush until you don't find out about anything until it happens. Just because
it's already out.
Lots of people
out.
are.
Right.
Yeah, so I actually had to wait. I waited till the day came out. Then I was like, okay, no one called me, so it's probably not a good sign. But I'll take a listen anyway. Listen through everything. I was like, no, I don't hear my guitar go anywhere. Okay, I'll let that go. Turns out, nothing from that session happened. But it opened the door, so he wanted me back. And there's a artist that they just signed who's now just starting to come out this year, the first female artist on OVO, called Naomi Sharon. Really cool artist. Kind of has an element of Sade in what she's doing. So he was coming to town, and he wanted someone that knows that world to work with her and would come up with songs. So I got in the studio. We wrote like a bunch of great songs. Many of hopefully will be coming out this year. And so that was like 6 months after we first met. Then, I was thinking, oh, maybe this is going to come out now. All of a sudden, crickets. Nothing happened. And then a couple of months go by, and I'm like, reach out occasionally, hey, what's happening? And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, so I've been distracted because Drake's working on this new project. It's like kind of a left turn for him to dance more house music. I'm like, oh, awesome. He's like, I'm working with, we're actually getting some ideas together with Black Coffee, another great South African producer who's worked on some of Drake's tracks that I love, like Passion Fruit and, the other one with Georgia Smith. So anyway, he's like, oh yeah, why don't you send me some ideas? So I put my guitar player hat on there and started sending guitar tracks to him. We went back and forth online, and then the three of us, and then when we liked something, we sent it to Drake. So I sent a bunch of ideas, and that happened to be one idea he loved and put a great top line on, and that was Overdrive, and that ended up on the album. So that's how it happened. So it was a long and winding.
It was a
road.
process.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have happened.
It was the music business.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's never a straight line. You never know how something's going to happen. But if, like I said, I always had that goal. Like I was like, how can I connect with them? How's that going to happen? And it really came back to my relationship with this producer, Noah. So anyway.
That is dope. No, it's a dope story, and it's also great for anybody listening too, to understand that, like to literally use the same words that you just used. That it's not a straight line.
Yeah.
And even if you have had deals and publishing deals, and you've worked with other artists, and you've gotten cuts that have charted, and like you can do all of that stuff, and it can still be.
Well, exactly. Because when you get to that level, I mean, everyone in the world is trying to get to a song with Drake, right? So, yeah. So it's not such an easy path to get in there. But again, it was not going to happen, no matter how talented I was, or even if I had a song, which was, I'm sure it was a number one hit. If it weren't for the relationship I already had with 40, I wouldn't have even had anyone's attention. Right. So,
right. And if it wasn't for the character that you have as a human, you wouldn't have even had that. You wouldn't have had that connection to have that relationship.
Exactly, with him, because again, I think once you get to a certain point too, I think it becomes even more important. I remember him talking about this, how they do. You can see keep quite a tight circle, and trust is really important in their world and like their crew. So when you have everyone trying to get your attention, it's you're even more protective and just anyway,
bro.
Comes back to who do you want to? It comes back to who do you want to be? Who do you want to hang out with today? Who do you want to make a song with today? So
Well, I'm
that's,
glad that you wanted to hang
yeah.
out with me today.
Hell yeah. Thanks for having me,
Bro.
man.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's always good when we get to like chat and catch up.
Hmm.
And hopefully we'll be able to facilitate something where we get to work together.
Yes, let's make
That's
it happen.
yeah.
You
I'm
said
trying to
it.
write the next like theme song to the next big show on TV.
Well,
Like that.
I need
That's
to get
that's
I
in
need
my
to get on a
list
theme
of
song.
things to do.
Yeah.
I want to write a theme
Well,
song.
so do I. And actually, that's been a goal for a long time. So let's make that happen. You guys heard it here first.
Facts. Yeah, James, thank you so much. Well, but you know what? Right before we go, are there any other projects that you're working on? Do you got any personal projects, anything that you're putting out that, we can point somebody to?
Well, definitely find out what I'm up to on socials. Instagram is probably the best place at James Bryan Music. Bryan with a Y, Bryan Music. Yeah, because I mean, besides most of what I spend my time is working with great artists, and so I do have stuff coming in the pipeline. You can never talk about it till you know what's happening. But at the same time, I'm always doing my own thing. I just put out my own album that I wrote during the pandemic called We Rise, which is a bunch of duets with other singers and instrumentalists from all over the world. And we wrote online during the pandemic, and like that process was new for me, and that album would never happen if I didn't go through this crazy thing. So yeah, I'd love for you to check that out too.
Word. Well, all of his information will be in the show notes below. You'll be linked. And James, again, thank you so much for taking the time out to chat with me. I
Yeah,
appreciate you being on the podcast. And you
appreciate it,
gotta,
and
since
good
you're in
luck with the
Canada, you gotta
search.
go and grab some Joy Burst. You gotta grab
Yes,
some Joy Burst. It's fire,
okay,
especially because it should fit with your diet in the powerful yoga.
that's
Like,
right.
all right, man.
Have a great day, man.